Soraya Flint had chased drug lords before, but none like Nalia Vexra, the invisible queenpin whose fey 40 million cocaine drop in 15 suitcases was just the beginning of a terrifying empire built on silence, shadows, and betrayal. The morning rain had just started to fall over Gatwick Airport when Customs Officer Jana Mallory noticed something strange. A routine incoming flight from Sao Paulo had offloaded its baggage, and among the sea of suitcases, 15 identical black ones caught her attention. At first glance, nothing looked unusual. They were basic, mid-sized roller bags, clean and standard issue, but their uniformity and identical condition raised questions. Each tag was different, listing a variety of names and destinations, but all shared one detail: they had come from the same flight. And all were checked in within minutes of each other. That alone wouldn't be enough to cause alarm, but there was something else. The weight. Every single suitcase was exactly 22.5 kilograms. Mallory flagged the suitcases for inspection and requested assistance. A pair of sniffer dogs were brought in, and their behavior changed immediately. They became restless around the suitcases, especially near the seams and bottom compartments. Within an hour, the airport's narcotics team was on site, led by Senior Officer Craig Murdo. With gloves and precision, they opened the first suitcase. Inside was a layer of neatly folded clothes, obviously staged. When the clothes were removed, they found a false bottom held down by riveted clasps. Beneath it lay 6 bricks, each tightly wrapped in gray duct tape, sealed with red wax at both ends. They cut open one of the bricks, and a fine white powder spilled out. Initial field tests confirmed the obvious: it was high-grade cocaine. Every suitcase told the same story. Hidden under the lining were 6 bricks, each weighing over a kilo. Altogether, 90 kilos of uncut cocaine had made it past airport checks until this final stage. The estimated street value was well over 40 million. And suddenly what had started as a quiet inspection became a full-scale international case. Authorities tried to locate the passengers listed on the baggage tags. None of them appeared on any official boarding lists. Surveillance footage was reviewed, and not a single person was seen collecting these 15 suitcases. In fact, as they traced the path backward, it became clear no individual had ever intended to claim them. The luggage was planted, sent with intent, delivered without contact, and expected to vanish into the system undetected. Someone had orchestrated this with precision, betting that at least some of the bags would be picked up by an inside source before routine checks could catch them. News of the seizure reached the National Crime Agency within hours. A multi-agency task force was formed to investigate the incident, and Detective Soraya Flint was selected to lead the case. Known for her sharp instincts and her ability to read criminal patterns like maps, Flint had taken down 3 trafficking cells in the past year alone. But even she hadn't seen something this bold, this calculated. She stood in the customs warehouse that evening, staring at the row of unclaimed, identical suitcases. She understood immediately this wasn't just a failed drug run. This was a test. Whoever sent those suitcases wasn't relying on luck. This was a probe, a way to see where the cracks in the system were, how long detection would take, and what kind of response would follow. Flint requested full data logs from the airline, airport security, baggage tracking, and even shipping container manifests. Nothing was off the table. She ordered a forensic audit of the travel records tied to the suitcase check-ins. It didn't take long to find more anomalies. The flight bookings had been made online, all from different locations, but through the same small agency in Rotterdam. Payment was done through crypto wallets that vanished hours after the tickets were confirmed. Soraya Flint didn't believe in coincidences. The case had all the marks of a well-oiled operation. The fake identities, the uniform bags, the carefully measured weight. It was all engineered. She wasn't just looking for who had packed the cocaine. She was looking for a network, a system so confident it didn't even need to show its face. The suitcases had arrived like ghosts, and now it was her job to find the hands that sent them. The clock had started, and whoever was behind this was already 10 steps ahead. Detective Soraya Flint sat in the task force headquarters 2 days after the discovery of the 15 suitcases, reviewing every detail available. The evidence confirmed what she had suspected from the beginning. This wasn't an isolated incident. It was a glimpse into something far more organized, far more deliberate. The question now was, who stood behind it? Her team had begun tracing the digital footprint of the airline tickets linked to the luggage. Each was purchased online, but all had passed through one particular agency, Skyway Europov, a low-profile travel desk based in Rotterdam. It had a legitimate office, but the building was closed and dark when local authorities visited. Inside, everything was wiped clean. The computers had been removed, and the only items left were some scattered brochures and an unplugged desk phone with no recent call history. The agency's website had gone offline within 24 hours of the suitcase seizure. That alone set off alarms. Digging deeper into online payment trails, analysts found that the tickets were paid using various cryptocurrencies routed through tumblers, digital laundering services that scrambled transaction origins. However, one transaction had not been cleaned well enough. It led to an email address used to register the booking portal account. From that, they uncovered a nameless Isran Maldo. Isran had no criminal record. On paper, he was clean, a 32-year-old Dutch citizen who worked freelance in IT consulting. But when Interpol searched his travel records and online activity, a different story emerged. He had visited Brazil 5 times in the last 7 months, with each trip lasting fewer than 4 days. He booked flights using different aliases each time and never checked luggage. Yet, records showed he had been physically present at 3 different airports where large cocaine seizures had occurred in the past year. He had never been arrested, never questioned, and never even flagged. Until now, Soraya had analysts scan chat rooms and encrypted forums on the dark web where smugglers often advertised routes, clients, and services. In one archived message chain, they found something chilling. Ezran had been communicating with a user called Chimera 32. The conversation was technical and coded, but key phrases stood out. Cargo layered in sets of 15. Delivery neutral. And red flag from Heathrow. One chilling message read, success not measured by delivery, but delay. It suggested the 15 suitcase drop wasn't even meant to succeed. It was designed to distract. Soraya began to suspect the entire operation was a smokescreen, a decoy, perfectly crafted to trigger a seizure and monopolize law enforcement's attention. While all eyes were on the Gatwick bust, something else, far more significant, could have quietly entered the continent. She requested that port authorities in Hamburg, Antwerp, and Thessaloniki recheck their incoming cargo manifests from the same week, especially those arriving from South America. If her hunch was right, the real shipment might already be in circulation. Meanwhile, surveillance footage from Sao Paulo's Garojos airport revealed that Ezrin had been spotted at the check encounters days before the Suitcases departed. He appeared in a black hoodie, surgical mask, and sunglasses, carrying nothing but a laptop bag. He wasn't seen again in London. Border records indicated he never entered the UK. He had booked the tickets remotely, delivered the suitcases to unknown mules at the Sao Paulo airport, and vanished. Interpol listed Ezrin Maldo as a person of interest. But finding him was like chasing vapor. His last known residence in Utrecht had been vacated weeks earlier. Neighbors said a man by that name used to live there, quiet and polite, but he hadn't been seen in a while. Inside the apartment, authorities found nothing. No clothing, no digital devices, no photos. Just a single glass on the kitchen counter and a map of Europe pinned to the wall with red thread connecting various cities. Gatwick wasn't even marked, but ports like Gdansk, Valencia, and Constanta were. Soraya's instincts told her that Ezrin was just a courier. Smart, cautious, and fast-moving, but not the mastermind. Whoever, Chemera 32, was, they had the brains, the structure, and the power. Ezrin was disposable. The cocaine, replaceable. But the message had been delivered. We're already here. And you're looking in the wrong direction. A lead came unexpectedly through a parallel investigation in Marseille, where French authorities had intercepted a small cargo van containing concealed narcotics. One of the men arrested during the operation, a heavily tattooed former pilot named S. Rico Velton, had information that intersected with Soraya Flint's case. He had no loyalty left in him, only fear, and he quickly began cooperating once he realized the depth of the charges he faced. What he shared redefined the investigation completely. Rico had transported shipments before. Never across airport, always by sea or remote airstrips. He said the 15 suitcase operation sounded familiar, not in the method, but in the mindset. The people behind such operations never repeated routes or personnel. Careers were shuffled constantly. Money moved through digital chains that couldn't be followed for more than 2 or 3 jumps, and nothing was personal. The system was cold, calculated, and precise. Rico described the organization like a machine, and the one keeping it running was a woman he referred to only as Assa Vexra. He didn't know her real name. No one did. She never spoke directly, never appeared in person. Orders came through voice, modulated audio, or encrypted text. Rumors claimed she had once been a high-level cyber defense analyst who went rogue. Others said she was the daughter of a Balkan arms dealer. But one thing was consistent: wherever her fingerprints showed up, cocaine followed, and not in small amounts. In Italy, Spain, Albania, Vextra's name was whispered in criminal circles, but had never been traced to a single crime scene. She existed like a shadow, known but unreachable. Rico mentioned something else. The 15 suitcase drop might have been Vextra's design, but the digital coordination, the bookings, crypto routing, and dark web communication were handled by someone else, a second in command. Someone codenamed as Chemera 32. This person didn't just execute commands, they anticipated responses. They studied law enforcement patterns. digital forensics, and even global customs delay statistics. It was chess, not checkers. Soraya immediately shifted focus. She ordered a sweep of all known communications involving Chamara 32, including historical logs from narcotics cases that had gone cold. They found digital fingerprints, never exact matches, but similar operational methods in Hungary, Belgium, and Northern Ireland. Always briefcases or suitcases, always abandoned, always distraction. Meanwhile, financial analysts assigned to the task force flagged suspicious crypto transactions linked to high-end art purchases and marine equipment from a shell company in Monaco. Following the trail, they discovered ownership of a luxury yacht named Maria. The ship had changed names 3 times in 3 years, but was currently docked in the Balearic Islands under the ownership of one Nalia Vextra, a name never seen in any legal registry, tax record, or official ID database. She existed only on one notarized bank account in Zurich. It was the first and only time the alias appeared in a verifiable format. A joint task force from Spain and Interpol moved quickly, staging a pre-dawn raid on the yacht's last known location. But Team Maria was gone. It had departed the previous evening under legal clearance with a falsified maintenance permit. Left behind in a champagne cooler in the yacht's living quarters was a burner phone, cleaned of all data except one file, a text message that read, "Too slow, Soraya." The message sent a wave of unease through the entire team. It confirmed 2 terrifying realities. First, Vexra knew who was investigating her. And second, she was close. Close enough to plant messages, monitor operations, and vanish without a trace. Back at headquarters, forensic teams examined every detail of the phone and cooler. No fingerprints. No hairs. The champagne was real, untouched. The yacht had sailed into international waters, and with its transponder turned off, it was invisible to all satellite tracking. They had been within hours of capturing the woman believed to be Europe's most elusive trafficker. But again, she had slipped through their fingers. Soraya stared at the message for hours. It was no longer a hunt for couriers or suitcases. It was now a war of minds. The game had changed, and she was being watched. The failure to capture Vexra during the Balearic yacht raid shifted the atmosphere inside the task force's war room. What had once felt like a pursuit of faceless criminals now carried a bitter edge of personal challenge. Vexra wasn't just orchestrating massive cocaine operations across Europe. She was provoking them, watching them, toying with the process. And if they weren't careful, she'd stay ahead until the entire operation collapsed from its own desperation. Detective Soraya Flint, now under direct pressure from the Home Secretary, turned to strategy over speed. She knew the only way to bring down a network this sophisticated was to make them think they were winning. So, she proposed a dangerous move. Bait them. A fabricated shipment was created. It mirrored the 15 suitcase drop in every detail. Same type of bags, same airline, same flight pattern from Brazil to London. But this time, the suitcases were loaded with decoys. Bricks of plaster, identical in size and weight to the original cocaine. Tracking devices were embedded inside each bag, along with hidden surveillance tags that would alert the team if anyone tampered with them. The flight was real, the suitcases were real, but the cargo was useless. And this time, the team was waiting. At Lisbon Airport, during the layover phase, 2 men arrived just before dawn. They approached the baggage carousel without any signs of caution. One wore a maintenance uniform with forged airport clearance. The other, dressed in civilian clothing, acted as his lookout. As soon as they made contact with the decoy bags, silent alerts were triggered. Within moments, armed security swarmed the area, and the suspects were taken down without incident. Their names were A. Dravencourt and Lo Nassim, both ex-military operatives. Neither spoke a word during their transfer to a holding facility in central Lisbon. When interrogated, they gave only their names and demanded legal representation. But it didn't matter, because their equipment said more than they ever could. Among their belongings were 2 encrypted GPS devices, each programmed to transmit coordinates every 5 minutes to a now deactivated server. There were biometric locks matching the construction found on the original Gatwick suitcases and a hard drive filled with hundreds of blacked, outshipping logs and flight numbers. None linked to the current drop. Soraya's team worked through the logs and discovered a critical revelation. The 15 suitcases from Gatwick were never the intended delivery. In fact, they weren't meant to succeed at all. They had been crafted as bait for the police. The real shipment, nearly double the value and quantity, had already passed through Europe. It had arrived 3 weeks earlier, hidden in refrigerated meat containers labeled as South American beef. The containers had been shipped through the port of Varna in Bulgaria, and customs records showed no anomalies at the time. A logistical misdirection had been pulled off flawlessly, and now the drugs were already deep within European cities, likely broken down into street-level operations beyond anyone's reach. Soraya's team had been chasing ghosts while the real product spread like wildfire. There was another chilling discovery. The GPS data from Draven and Leo's devices didn't just track the Lisbon pickup. It showed they had previously conducted similar missions in Oslo, Palermo, and Ghent, all involving unclaimed baggage pickups that never appeared in law enforcement databases. It was clear now that Vexra's network had perfected the art of failure. Every seized package, every flagged courier, every arrest had been engineered distractions, drawing agencies into a loop of false victories, while the real operations thrived untouched. Despite this, one detail gave Soraya hope. One of the shipping logs on the hard drive mentioned a vessel scheduled to arrive in Rotterdam within the next 4 days. Its cargo listed generically as machinery components. But the weight logs showed discrepancies, and more importantly, it was connected to the same shell company used to register the Gallimareia yacht. It was a thin lead, but it was something. As Soraya stood in front of a massive pinboard filled with red yarn and mugshots, her eyes kept returning to one thread, Vexra's connection to Chamera 32. One led operations in the shadows, the other planted the lies. But now, for the first time, there was a traceable path. She didn't know if Rotterdam would bring them the break they needed, or another trap. But she was done waiting. This time, she would move first. The vessel named O'Radian Sun docked at the port of Rotterdam just before dawn. Fog drifted lazily over the water as cranes began unloading containers onto the docks. Among them was a 40-foot refrigerated unit labeled Machinery Components. Its declared contents vague, its weight inconsistent. A task force was already in place, quietly observing from a distance, keeping their presence discreet. Soraya Flint stood inside a nearby command van, eyes fixed on the live feed from thermal drones circling above. As dock workers moved the containers, the suspicious unit was taken aside for a random inspection. Customs officers broke the seal and opened it. Inside were several heavy crates secured with reinforced metal bands. On paper, these were gearboxes for industrial drills. But the crates weren't bolted correctly. Hidden in the hollow chambers of each gearbox were tightly packed bundles of wrapped powder. Initial tests confirmed the obvious: cocaine, again, roughly 180 kilograms, valued at close to 80 million. The real shipment had been caught, and this time there was no illusion. The drugs were real. The deception was not on them. It was on Vexra. The crate's inner wall bore a faint symbol, something not seen in previous evidence. A serpent coiled into a double, helix shape. The task force's tech team traced it to an obscure watermark used in digital files shared by a member of Chummer 32's online alias years earlier. For the first time, a direct connection was confirmed between Vexra's physical operation and her digital ghost. But the team barely had time to celebrate before something more disturbing emerged. The warehouse adjacent to where the container had been scheduled to be delivered had caught fire within the hour. It was unoccupied, but surveillance showed a man entering the facility just minutes before flames erupted. His features were obscured by a mask and hoodie, but a slight limp gave him away. Analysts compared his gait to airport footage from Sao Paulo. It was Ezrin Maldo. Ezrin had returned. Despite being one of Europe's most wanted digital couriers, he had risked showing up in person. Whether to destroy evidence or simply send another message wasn't clear. But one thing was certain: Vexra was not retreating. She was adapting. Interpol launched simultaneous raids on 4 addresses linked to shell companies used by Chumera 32. In one of the flats in Prague, agents found a locked server room operating on a private network. It was filled with dusty monitors, routers, and cooling units, all linked to one central drive. The encryption was military grade, and decryption took 38 straight hours. When the files were opened, they revealed something Soraya hadn't expected: blueprints for more operations. Not drug shipments, but weapon transfers, human trafficking routes, and offshore shell company hierarchies that stretched into politics and finance. Vexra wasn't just a trafficker. She was running a criminal empire with departments, branches, and digital infrastructure more sophisticated than some governments. Her reach extended into sectors no one had thought to monitor. Cocaine was only one part of her machine, and the 15 suitcases. They had been a warning shot, not a mistake. The final breakthrough came unexpectedly. A DNA match was returned from the champagne glass found on the Blasmareya yacht. It matched with a birth record of a child born in 1987 in Sarajevo, Nalia Vexra, daughter of a wartime intelligence officer who had disappeared after the Bosnian conflict. She had no official adult documentation, no criminal record, and no known associates listed under her real identity. But now they had proof. She was real, and she had been living under their radar for years. Interpol issued a red notice with her actual name and image, reconstructed digitally from forensic data and aged-up childhood photos. Europe's most elusive trafficker was no longer a ghost. She had a face. But before they could act on the momentum, Dravencore was found dead in his prison cell in Lisbon. An apparent suicide. The timing was suspicious. Hours later, Ezrin Maldo vanished again, slipping past border checks in Romania using a stolen identity. One by one, the players were vanishing. Saraya stood before a room full of agents and screens, the digital face of Nalia Vexra staring back at her from the wall. The case wasn't over. It had only just widened. They had cracked one layer, but the structure still stood. 15 suitcases had exposed a sliver of something far more dangerous, an empire built on shadows, power, and silence. And somewhere out there Vexra was still watching, still building, still untouchable.